Metal Gear Solid came out during the First World War, and it wasn't the first Metal Gear game, but no one really cares. It entered into the gaming space during perhaps the most exciting gaming era of all time, and despite creativity being at an all-time high, it still stood out for many reasons. It's loved, it's hated, underrated, overrated, and that ain't even the weirdest thing about its existence. Even today, the gaming world has an empty space, at least I think it does, what with the series' absence on the big stage. And that is because Hideo Kojima got ousted from Konami and went away to make walking simulators on mountains, as Konami killed what was left of the MGS franchise. Well, there's a remake coming out, but personally, I neither idolize nor hate Kojima. He's an interesting guy with interesting ideas. But what I have definitely observed is that I've never seen an idea of his that sits on the middle of the spectrum. If it originates from Kojima land, it's either going to be incredible or crap. But what really made it stand out was its fusion of exciting stealth action gameplay and emotional storytelling in the form of every cutscene that ever fucking existed. I don't really know how I feel about this game, even now. I feel like I do, but maybe I don't. Just that I do feel about it, and the things that I do feel are powerful enough to make me want to play it again and again and again for about literally 20 or so years now. And that's why we're here today. MGS1 is an anomaly. It's simultaneously the most cringy, pathetic attempt at writing a story I've ever seen, and also the most compelling story I think I have ever seen in a game. Enough to be like a 25-year brainworm that I play every 5 years, and love to death, probably literally. It's both of these things at once. It's a game I'm more nostalgic for than pretty much any other. Almost any other, certainly. And I'm unsure what it did to earn the distinction to begin with. Well, that's what essays are for, isn't it? It tries to be a Hollywood action movie with benefits, it shits the bed and comes out as a B movie, but when it's accidentally being its authentic, autistic self, there's an honesty in its tonality and atmosphere that transcends dimensions and ascends from the cringe radiation zone, showing its true face to be surprisingly genuine as it emerges from the darkness, at least insofar as the themes it tries to convey and the ways that it goes about it. Regarding the many emotional moments, maybe it doesn't always get across the line, but it collapses and dies in a heap of its own self, close enough to the line that it leaves a solid impression and gets a good ovation from me. When I was a preteen, it didn't bother me much because I was a psychological microwave chip with the emotional understanding of an unhatched egg. Whereas most games prioritize gameplay, Kojima decided he wanted to write every 80s action movie ever, but for sensitive people. But he needed an excuse. MGS1 was born. The inexorable bond of cringe and genius got its start on the PlayStation here, with each scene its own existential crisis for reasons intended and otherwise. I feel obligated to mention that in the hierarchy of interesting video game shit that I care enough to talk about, story and vibes rank pretty high, and while this is a retrospective analysis, the retrospective part, as ever, is just a vector that I sometimes use to aid me in the analysis, which is where the fun stuff happens for me. So while this is on the surface just an essay about the story, atmosphere, ambience, tonal direction, music, other shit, other things may catch my eye, because that's the beauty of Metal Gear Solid. It's so weird in the best possible ways. It's so weird that we still have videos coming out in the current day showing off things that people didn't know was in the game. Even me sometimes. I think I know everything, then I remember I don't. These are the residual little things that linger when the thrill of gameplay wears off. And I think it's in this little liminal space that Metal Gear Solid truly thrives. That and the Stinger missiles. MGS does facilitate this very well, so it's in that sweet spot for my more posh wanker analysis videos. It's why I miss the stealth genre, actually. Stealth games are a deviation in the sense that avoidance to combat is the sign of expertise. The one true sign of it. The big boss rank isn't given to those who fuck bumble through the game like a guided missile through a narrow fucking corridor, but the sneaky people who hug walls and memorize patrol patterns and learn the exploits. So I greatly appreciate this series allowing me to navigate my way through those impeding me from my goal in lieu of blowing them up, while also simultaneously offering me the option to engage in the latter if all else fails or morality bores me, because grenades are fun. In short, we'll talk gameplay when it's fun to do so, and we're not going for a specific rank. Honestly, this playthrough will probably be the most fun because I'm going to be more lethal if I feel like it. Maybe that's why MGS always called to me in the night. So yeah, Metal Gear Solid is cringy, and that's when it shines the most. Perhaps the key to understanding the appeal of MGS, and why I love it like I do, is in remembering how fun it can be to let go of any preconceived notions of what I think it should be, and to simply accept it as it is. This essay in general I think is set to be a lot more phenomenological than my others, and a lot more self-absorbed, but maybe it'll be relatable. I don't know. I really love Metal Gear Solid, man, and it's high time I found out why exactly that is. I know it's not just an unhealthy attachment to the 90s, though that is admittedly a remarkably large part of the Endeavour. It's an anti-war, anti-nuclear weapon game about genes, but I'll probably forget that a lot because it's just so fun.
Trust your instincts as a soldier, as a gamer.
Unique though it is, MGS gives you an option upon being greeted with this awesome futuristic main menu. That would be 10 minutes of briefing files in case you want a little extra lore, all set in a cold, dark room, far removed from the retro-futuristic radar and code-like imagery. It's a really fun disparity, to be honest with you. In short, we're Solid Snake, we're a retired soldier who retreated to Alaska to live with the wolf dogs because society sucks, and it still sucked back in 1998 too, even though this was actually set in 2005 but came out in 1998. What I'm saying is society's always sucked and it always will. Cutscenes are long in MGS because Kojima's half game and half movie man, and that ratio will skew towards movie as we move further along the chronology of the series. But with the optional nature of this one, I don't really mind at all. It helps calm me down and center me. It calms me properly. You know what I mean? Especially these days when a lot of games are hell-bent on hooking you right away because high-speed internet and smartphones have created a society of impatient people, I guess? Myself very much included. I'm working on that. It can only be the 90s when a game treats itself like a movie, a book, and a game, all in one. Solid Snake sits in a room being briefed on the mission by Colonel Campbell, a former commander, and Naomi Hunter, a bitch. And that is the briefing files. Of all the songs to start with in a stealth action game, the opening vocals to a soft Gaelic song is perhaps the most unique thing that you could possibly go with. It's called The Best Is Yet to Come, and you probably heard of it. I doubt you'd click on a Metal Gear Solid essay unless you played it at least once, right? The game's got its fair share of the sharper, more electronic music that's more symbolic of the late 90s, but this is a real tone setter. Really fantastic stuff. I really love this song. Not just because it makes me feel... Okay, it's because it makes me feel young. We're here to stop a group of terrorists called Foxhound, who will be our primary antagonist today, and a bunch of weirdos. They say they want the remains of Big Boss, and if they don't get it within 24 hours, they'll launch a literal nuke. We also gotta rescue a couple hostages. Big Boss is Solid Snake's dad, or rather, Snake's a clone of his. This is revealed later, but if you're worried about spoilers, you wouldn't be watching an essay on a game. Snake killed him, Mr. Big Boss, at the end of a game called Metal Gear, which is part of the timeline. It just wasn't as solid as this one. If I live long enough to do a video on MGS3, then I'll address it then too, when it's actually relevant. But you know, you never know what's around the corner. I could get hit by a bus. So, the rest of Foxhound. Psycho Mantis, a psychic dude in a gas mask. Sniper Wolf, a long-haired sniper whose hair never gets in front of her scope somehow. Decoy Octopus, a deadly swimmer. Falcon Raven, Muck Tuck champion. Revolver Ocelot, spinny shooty gunman. And their leader, Liquid Shake. It's Snake's former unit and one that Colonel Campbell was a commander of. Snake's appearance and demeanor are immediately striking, aren't they? You got the bandana, the mullet, the grizzled voice, the skin-tight sneaky suit, the blatant rip-off of Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, which is also an 80s action movie. Surprise, surprise. He's not just inspired by him actually, he's just a blatant rip-off. Personally, I don't give a shit. I ain't gonna moan about it. I think it's funny. I like that he's honest about it. He has enough original ideas, so I don't really see any issue. The first area gives you a glimpse of Trenchcoat Man, our villain. It's Liquid Shake. Right, it's Liquid Snake. Yeah, we're Solid and he's Liquid. We'd make a great breakfast meal together. It's a tutorial area that, even on easy mode, can be a bit tricky because the controls have the fluidity and smoothness of sandpaper. I think they call it tank controls. And it fits like a glove, that designation. Thing is, you can adapt to it, and you will if you play it long enough, and this area is a lovely first step in doing so. Practically speaking, it's small and cramped, but mercifully short, and thematically speaking, it's a good idea for a starting point, in that it has us literally ascend from the darkness, underground, and up into the blinding white darkness of Shadow Moses Island's exterior climbs. Maybe Kojima just wanted to have a cool intro cinematic and thought, a fucking elevator, yeah. I'm glad he did. Elevators, actually fuck elevators, I hate elevators. MGS isn't the first cinematic game, but it did do it best, I think, at least back in the day. The names of the characters appearing is a really nice touch that even real movies don't tend to do. But that's the corny hamminess of MGS on display again. It can get away with things like that, you know? The game's already set the precedent of not being afraid to potentially embarrass itself when it called the main antagonist and antagonist Solid and Liquid Snake. With the Breakfast Brothers leading the show, Kojima can conceivably try whatever the fuck he wants now. You want that kind of freedom as a writer. He took that requisite risk, and I admire and I respect that, even if I do laugh at it too. It's a laugh of love.
Behind B. Colonel, what's a Russian gunship doing here?
I have no idea.
We are introduced in earnest to Snake's crack team of nerds who are going to help him in this mission. They include Colonel Roy Campbell. He's sleazy, but he's also just an awkward dude who's got a job to do and he needs a friend a little closer to his age. He's our colonel and he'll be colonelling us through the base while withholding important information from us because he's got ulterior motives. Nastasha Romanenko can be unlocked as an optional Codex support member, but she mainly cries about why nukes are bad She has some good advice for boss battles though, 1 for 1.52 on the codec. Mei Ling designed our radar and codec. Her stereotypical charm reminds me of the 90s before everyone became miserable and turned into outrage hyenas. MGS was made in a time wherein people didn't have to hop over their own bollocks and run everything by a politically charged, terminally online fuckwad committee in order to get the green light for a game. A modern release, or re-release, dubbed the Master Collection Volume 1. How's it a Master Collection if it's only... Well, it included a warning for anyone too afraid to think for themselves, proclaiming, "This game contains expressions and themes which may be considered outdated. However, these elements have been included without alteration to preserve the historical context in which the game was made and the creator's original vision. Player discretion is advised." How nice of them. Thank you, modern politically charged person, for warning me, an adult with agency, about these scary, outdated expressions and themes. It's almost like that's why I play older games and write 20,000 word essays about them while largely ignoring the fucking soulless bullshit AAA gaming market in the current year that is filled with fucking identity politics. Thankfully, this is the original PlayStation 1 version on a disc via my PS3 and a third-party HDMI adapter. That is more than enough modernity for me, although the disc has a lot of scratches on it and occasionally makes beeping sounds. It should be okay. Naomi is passable right now, Naomi Hunter, but we'll see if she's as much an annoying shitface as I remember as we progress through Kojima's stealthy love story. Nuclear love story. I could use that for the title. A nuclear love story. Master Miller's chiller than a stone cold killer, but he gives us some solid advice that's so reinforced it breaks through the fourth wall like a C4 bomb. Stick you there. I like Miller, he's fun. And that's our team, for now. You know the art style is good when you remember the artist by name, it's Yoji Shinkawa. I love the art style in this game, and the portraits reflect that too. Their different expressions are like an old visual novel, and even though it's subtle, it really carries the codec calls. The Heliport is a special place with a lot of special resonance, I think for a lot of people, certainly with me. It's the first time the game slaps you in the face with the extreme nature of the game's setting. The blinding white light, the howling wind, and the highly detailed snow, at least relative to 1998. It paints a moving picture so serene that you can be forgiven for forgetting that you're on a mission to stop terrorists. No music, just the more violent sounds of the extreme end of the natural world. Its atmosphere done so incredibly well that I could leave it running, I'd fall asleep, and just wake up to it. Maybe they have videos of it on YouTube. I actually made a point to clip the atmosphere of pretty much every level, and I will include it in like a little compilation later. I like Mei Ling's advice. It's burned into my brain.
I'll share some more quotes with you if you like.
I'm looking forward to it.
Also, if you call her a bunch of times and don't save, this happens. Equipment's bare bones, and that is intentional. The sense of progression will be aided by your inventory. Or is it inventory? I'll never know. It becomes larger as you gather more weapons and items as the game goes on. Your life bar will go up after certain big moments too, so I'll touch on how well the pacing is, for the most part, sometime later. We're also introduced to surveillance cameras, whose cone of vision isn't great, but it's all about the timing. They also have an audio cue, an audio tell, so they're fairly easy to avoid, unless you're playing it for the first time ever. You have two ways of infiltrating the tank hangar, the bottom vent or the top one. Player choice is a nice thing. Miller calls and introduces himself, and now we've got him as support as well. He tells us our mine is our most dangerous weapon, but I need it so I can't turn it into a mind grenade. I also put in a call to Nastasha Rimaneko to log her number in the codec, otherwise I would forget, I just know it. Usually I'd be pissed off crawling through vents, but it's so saturated in atmosphere that I actually kind of enjoy it. I can fall asleep in there. I have done before. The moving mechanical noises are as intimidating as they are peaceful. It's this weird sense of dissonance, but it's not one that I feel negative about at all. It's foreboding in the sense that it's deeply unnatural, but it's peaceful in the sense that you're completely unseen, and it feels alive, even in that intimidating way. It's like you're alone, very much, but you don't feel alone. I think that's the beauty of the stealth genre in general, not just the thrill of sneaking around or the suspense, but those moments of quiet in between. I think that's why Shadow Moses, even though so much violent shit happens there, it feels really, really cozy in general.
I moved the Dark Chief to the cell in the first floor basement.
First floor basement.
As you can see and hear, Snake likes to repeat things that people say, even when he's supposed to be shutting the fuck up. Music. It really hits when you use it sparingly. There's this modulated choral chanting, in addition to the deep, dark synthesizer, and the percussion hits a little harder every few moments to remind you that you ain't safe. At least I imagine that's the idea, even if it ain't, it's certainly the outcome. Within this area you'll find a few rooms, but they're not all accessible. Keycards are a thing in this game, and it's part of the progression of the game, and so there is backtracking later. Honestly, given how short the game is and how boxed in the map is, I don't really mind all that much. It doesn't take particularly long, and another thing is that we're already building our own mental map of the base as we go. Maps for areas are fine, in fact I love that, and the radar's a really classy way to implement it, but you don't always need some global map, so I think this is totally okay. The guards are light in this area and it's only an incremental difficulty increase. It's scarce ever mentioned, but I've never in my 20 something years of playing this game ever felt as though there was an uncalled for difficulty spike that felt unfair. In that vein, we pick up our first gun via the SOCOM. It's a simple enough pistol that makes a whole lot of noise. It's here on easy mode, but on normal I think it's somewhere else. Personally, I just opted for easy because I'm rusty as hell and I'm here for the fun, not a challenge. But if you're feeling masochistic, go for it. Just don't do hard mode if it's your first playthrough. It's only advice, but Master Miller would agree. Right, Miller?
If you're feeling drowsy, you should get some sleep.
Shit, wrong quote. And be sure to utilize your first-person camera. Sometimes you can be taken by surprise and there's an emphasis on observing your surroundings so as to take better advantage of them. It is a stealth game, after all.
Control your bodily functions. You never know when a long demo is about to begin.
That's right folks, Kojima-san taught me how to piss well. The cell area is great because it's totally devoid of guards, but it ain't bereft of music. In fact, the music sounds like Final Fantasy VII with that bassy synthesizer that plays during the suspenseful moments. I dig it. In fact, this game came out just a year after that, I believe, so, well, it's a product of the time. We're going through some more cramped vents to locate the DARPA chief, Donald Anderson. I say his full name because by MGS 3 and 4, it'll be pretty important, but it's only then that we can do the quiz show that I'm going to call Retcon or Not. And there are no winners because, where the fuck would we know? Now we're dropping into the Don's cubicle and stop. I forgot. The aesthetic. Look at this shit. Just look. This is the most late 90s aesthetic I've ever seen. I like naming aesthetics, and I called Nier Replicants the Nier aesthetic, although that is the next video, so yeah. So this cyber green one is like the MGS1 aesthetic. Maybe there'll be a football game one day that I can review and call it the Athletic aesthetic. Shut up. But it's not just the, you know, the dulcet green that borders on Viridian. It's the darkness it sits in contrast with. They bring each other out. Nothing brings out the dark like the light, and nothing brings out light like darkness. It's simple. It's simple, but it hits all the notes that it tries to hit. Old media wasn't afraid to be simple and blocky and symmetrical. The cars were the same. You remember the cars from the 90s, how cool they looked? Now everything's smooth and boring. They've literally taken away the edge from things. Nothing has any edge anymore. Literally. This game really is a relic of a better time. Anyway, the man in the cell. Long cutscenes. MGS is famous for him. Snake finds the DARPA chief, Blanderson, in a dingy cell with the world's dirtiest shitter. I've never seen a toilet that bad in my life. He tells us about a new weapon that can launch nukes from absolutely anywhere.
Metal Gear. It can't be.
Solid Shake knows about it because of the old Metal Gear games. Arms Tech and DARPA have been at it again, but Metal Gear Rex has fallen into the hands of Liquid Shake.
Shut up in there, will ya?
Sorry, Johnny. Rex needs 2 passwords to launch the nuke at whatever foxhound they're gonna aim it at. They got Blanderson's because Psycho Mantis read his mind, but there's a dude called Kenneth Baker who knows the other. But we can also stop the launch with some card keys, because nothing says 90s like card keys. Baker's down below past some weirdly coloured walls and we get given a PAN card. Kojima makes sure to have Solid Snake say Personal Area Network because he loves acronyms, and that's why I still remember them. Personal Area Network, Permissive Action. Even now, Blanderson starts acting a little odd, mentioning the Pentagon and shit, but then he dies, so who cares? Now legit, it's such a dramatic death. He just dies. Campbell doesn't know why the dude just had a heart attack, and Snake's like, why though? Read the file, you know? You fucking can't come. What's a file? You mean like for nails? Our fellow prisoner has escaped. Hello, Meryl. She accuses us of killing the Blonald. Snake notices our hands are shaken and figures out right away that she is a rookie. And then we get ambushed. First taste of intense combat here. Very tasty combat, the tastiest kind. So we use our SOCOM and stun grenades. It's just waves of enemies. You can quick reload and skip the animation by clicking R1 twice. And also keeping your ration equipped is a very good idea in battle because it means Snake will auto use it instead of just dying when his health hits 0. That'll be a constant throughout most Metal Gear games ever, actually, as we go through them. Meryl shoots at us after we win and strikes a pose, then enters an elevator. Fuck elevators. Then Mantis appears and floats for a bit and calls her a good girl. Or maybe we're the good girl. That'd be a cool plot twist, wouldn't it? Good girl, Snake. Well, Snake assumes he's hallucinating, but Naomi's all, nah, it's just some psychic guy in a gas mask, you're okay. It's like, alright then. And this is a running theme for Metal Gear Solid, that they're just baking into it really, really quickly. I appreciate them doing that because there's literally no reverence at all for real world notions of psychic stuff. or even death in some ways. That's partly what makes Metal Gear fun, the supernatural stuff that's just baked in with everything else to the point where no one really questions it, like ever, because they do it so quickly, and nobody bats an eye. Yeah, this guy's psychic. Okay, Psycho Mantis. And this guy's Johnny. He's butt naked because that's funny in Kojima land. He's naked. Isn't it funny? Hey, if you're playing via the PS3, you can turn analog mode on in the controller settings. If you've been gaming for decades, then you're probably like me, and using the D-pad is like using an Xbox controller with the analog stick near the top of the controller. It's very painful on my wrist because I'm a fucking shell of a man. So I'd advise analog mode. It is a little difficult to get used to because the game was designed originally for a D-pad, but it will save you some tendons. I guess the weird thing is, you've got a game that was designed with tank controls in mind, and then you play it with the smoothness of an analog stick. It can be quite odd, but there's a skill curve to that. You can get used to it pretty easily. Welcome to the armory. No guards yet. They will come eventually, but not just yet. This is an area that we'll be coming back to a hell of a lot for other weapons, but for now it's just the C4 that we're after. There are 3 walls that you can destroy, just the 3, and 2 are optional and simply give you ammo that you don't need, as well as some C4 to replace the one you just wasted to blow up the useless wall. It was around the time that Nastasha was talking about permissive action links that I realized one of my favorite things about Metal Gear. It's the borderline insane attention to detail, especially with regard to military terminology. It'll be really funny very soon. Nastasha says something actually here that piques my interest, and it's mainly about the narrative of the game, about how Metal Gear destroyed the delicate nuclear balance. It reminded me that in the 90s, nuclear war seemed very far off. I barely heard about it back then. The Cold War was an antiquity, and the future seemed more exciting the closer you got to Y2K. And now we fast forward to 2024, which is what it is right now. It'll probably be years before this comes out, assuming I ever put it out, but we're in 2024 now, and we have world leaders just casually throwing around threats of using nukes while they invade other countries. I won't give you my opinion on it, don't worry, I'm not going to make this political, or any more than the game would need me to be, but last night I had another dream that England was getting nuked. I blame this game for reminding me how shit the world is, but it is a good reflection of just how prescient Kojima's writing tended to be. I also enjoy the reverence with which the game approaches the destructive power of nukes. It's good for the suspense of the story, it reminds you of the stakes, but also acts as a chilling reminder of the damage that could be done at any moment, and how sooner or later every human being walking this planet has to reconcile somehow with the reality, a very cold reality that we as a collective have collectively implemented and now integrated into a system of governance that permits old, out-of-touch pieces of shit to hold every single one of our lives in the balance with just the push of a few buttons. It's a really sobering thought, and I like that this game gives a voice to that internal struggle I've had for about a decade now. It's the ultimate fucking black pill, man. I often imagine nukes like dropping on England, for instance. Maybe London? Shit, that's like £5 worth of damage. At this point, I decide I no longer want to call Nastasha. She's literally just the nuclear black pill codec option, and I'm trying to enjoy my psychic sneaky box game about love and nukes. Shit. So this is a chaff grenade, and it makes the cameras go mental and malfunction for an amount of time that I really should have counted but never did. I forgot. Sorry. Feels like 10 to 15 seconds, if I had to guess. And it's enough time to grab whatever they snuck in, whatever corner you're running to. It may be useless, but as Mei Ling says, he who knows that enough is enough will always have enough. Oh, this game was clever. Holy shit. Baker, Booby Trap, Twirly Gun Mustache Man. This is Revolver Ocelot. I know because it says so on the screen. And he says it out loud too, so it's definitely his name. Gotta make sure everyone knows your cool name, right? You ever feel like most Metal Gear characters are just big anime fans who never grew up? But since they're in a crazy world with supernatural shit and no accountability because they're literally just terrorists and warriors, that they could just act out their anime fantasies? Even jacks off his gun. Just me? Ocelot's not our first boss battle, I think that counts as the guys in the other room, but he's our first fun boss battle. And we can't run through the middle because Kenneth's been turned into the human spiderweb. That means running back and forth like a Charlie Chaplin movie. But I'm not using that music because I hate it with a passion. You can use a stun grenade to temporarily incapacitate him, but the trick is to anticipate where he'll be next, as opposed to where he is at the time. And then telegraph his movements as Kenneth makes sad wanking sounds constantly in the background, and then simply make sure you have the ammo and fill him with lead. Boss battles in MGS are like moving puzzles, especially the earlier games. They're not particularly complex, but they are creative, they can be quite fun, even if you have to do them over and over again. And they're a little cumbersome to figure out sometimes. Made worse by everything moving so slowly, certainly in this game. That said, for a game with tank controls, for it to integrate combat in this way into the game in any form is going to be a challenge, so this approach I think is the most fun and practical way. His weakness is his love, it's his revolver, which he only gets 6 rounds for, and he's open to attack while he's reloading. I'd have taken advantage of that during this playthrough, but I just wanted to know if you could judo throw him. You can, but you can punch him. Can I throw him? Let me throw him, game. What the fuck? I want to punch him. You can punch him. We defeat Ocelot.
You're pretty good.
And a cyborg ninja drops from the ceiling and slices his hand off completely, also freeing Kenneth. Even worse, Ocelot dropped his precious gun. He runs off because not even his mustache can tourniquet the bleeding, and Snake seems to recognize the Power Ranger. The cyborgy guy freaks out and he runs off too, leaving Snake to ask Kenneth Baker about Metal Gear things and what the hell just happened. He mentions Muff. He mentions Muff, and it's like I said, man, Kojima Land loves its acronyms. And they love stock footage too, so at least in 98 they did. You'll see a lot of this. Does the job well, the stock footage, but the juxtaposition and innate disparity between Solid Snake's polygonal model and the real world footage of nuclear war things is exceptionally jarring. You bleed into the jarring shit eventually, it just takes a while. Fucking Muff. Kenneth tells us that they got his code through torture, and that he and Blonald, and everyone with a top secret code, has psychic insulation to stop psychic people from gaining such information through psychic means. Metal Gear Solid, but Blonald told us Mantis read his mind, so Blonald's a liar. Well, he was, he's dead now. He then tells us to link up with Meryl to get the nuclear release keys and a scientist called Dr. Emmerich, and then tells us why Metal Gear exists. Essentially, any small country now has the resources to develop their own nukes, so Metal Gear Raid puts the US a cut above China and Russia by giving them a nuclear-capable walking battle tank that can launch from anywhere in the world. He also gives us an optical disc with data from the exercise. Snake seems as confused as the player most likely is at this point. That's a recurring theme. It's nice to have a protagonist be as clueless as I am. As for the ninja, he's an experimental genome soldier. He says to ask Naomi. Weird that, isn't it? He then does a Blanderson, freaking out like he's the last Pringle in a falling tube of Pringles, before dying exactly like Blonald Blanderson did. He does a Blonald. I guess Muff's bad for you. Snake calls the Colonel and he's like,
Why the fuck, Colonel?
But then Colonel's like,
Snake, shut up. Stop complaining. Find Meryl, she's my niece. Okay, Colonel.
We now have a level 2 card, so that we can get the FAMAS, a much more gunny gun than the SOCOM, but I prefer the SOCOM because it's more pinpoint, if you know what I mean. Up above, we grab a SOCOM suppressor, or a second zipper, as they call it. We also grab a box and whatever's in here, but I made a grave miscalculation. I've played a lot of MGS 2 and 3, more than I have the first game anyway, and I prefer not to kill enemies. It's just a natural state of mine. So I figured I had a lot more leeway than I evidently did, but I forgot how stupidly hard MGS 1 is compared to the next games. He caught me off guard and I got my first alert, so I went right up the ladder, came back down and got my mine detector, shot him in the back about 3 times.
All for revenge.
There is a trick to this that I could employ, but I don't want to. But here's what you do if you feel like it. Mash the R1 button to rapidly equip and unequip the weapon you're holding, and the animation for whatever reason cancels out the sound. That is the sound of your footsteps running along the ground. There's a similar trick in MGS 2, but that just helps you crawl quicker. That's more about speed as opposed to stealth. Though I suppose it's all connected. Meryl's number's on the back of the actual literal PS1 game case, so we give her a call and she and Snake get along really well. I like their interactions, I like their chemistry. She starts out all starstruck that she's speaking to the Solid Shake, and she's much younger, like about 18 according to the uppercase I internet, as opposed to Shake being like 33. But still, there's some banter there and a genuine connection. She's far less annoying than you'd expect an 18-year-old to be. Less annoying than I was at 18, anyway, 75 years ago. She tells us that this whole place is actually just a front for the Metal Gear project. Colonel lies a lot, neglected to mention that. Snake gives her a little stick for being hesitant earlier, but gives her some harsh truths about being a soldier that she really needs to hear. You can really feel Snake's grizzled veteran status here, and I think much of the heavy lifting is actually done by David Hayter's voice acting. He has this ability to pull out a speech that would probably sound a bit weird if given to like literally anybody else, but when he puts on that Snake voice, he just finds a way to make it work. I imagine he can take literally any material and just turn it into absolute gold. I don't like to, get too ooh about people. He's really, really good. Eventually Meryl yaps too much and Snake's like, just stay out of my way. She takes it in stride though, and they have a good laugh about it before endeavoring to meet up soon. The Best Is Yet to Come plays again during the codec call, but via an instrumental. But for us, for now, it is the Canyon. and the Colonel really likes my box.
A cardboard box? Yeah, remember that trick? That's the snake I remember. Those poor fools won't know what hit them.
Wait, Meryl's being stupid and charging ahead. She is annoying. Snake's lying though.
Wait, you said you'd stay put and be a good girl.
Maybe you can't turn everything to gold. Most things. First though, we have to attempt this laser section. This is 9 times out of 10 where I'll get my first alert of the game, because I'm too impatient sometimes. Other times I'm fucking zen-like. It's weird. Equipping the cigarettes will help illuminate and visualize the laser sensors in front of you. Get it wrong and it's game over, because the room will fill with gas, you don't have a gas mask yet, and the cigs will sap at your health anyway, meaning your health isn't going to be too good. But it's easy enough if you're not impatient, like I usually am. And then it's a hop, skip and a fuck to the canyon. It's all about depth perception, really.
You stay put and be a good girl.
A man named Deep Throat tells us that there are claymore mines nearby, and that's where the mine detector comes in. The cool thing is that you can not only just navigate around them, but collect them for yourself by going prone and crawling over them. The canyon is really beautiful, and deadly. As perfect a boss arena as it is a place to chill in for a bit and explore. Maybe whip out your box and just, yeah, Vulcan Raven.
Raven me.
The box does not fool him. It's a peculiar boss battle, this one. I like how he laughs at shit while fighting. He loves it. You can't help but like him, he's so honest. It's just tank versus man with grenades. He's the tank man, we're the grenade man. We just gotta fight about shit. It's so simple and pure. It's the essence of fucking manly shit, you know? And it's the only thing I know of that damages him, the grenades. You have to avoid getting too close or too far away, since he can use his projectiles from afar, but just as easily squish you into the snow if you get too frisky with Mr. Tank. So you gotta sort of plan your moves so that the trajectory, oh that's hard to say, trajectory of the grenade goes up and over the tank and into the thingy. I don't know. Military terminology ain't my specialty. It looks like he was just chilling in there though, or maybe driving the thing, because instead of him flying out, a random grunt flies out. In the remake, he catches on fire and Snake punches him. And by remake, I mean that GameCube version. We've already had a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake. It's weird to think what we have. I never played it. I don't think I ever will. I swear Kojima thinks of that more as canon than this though. Raven's talking with his mates after the battle and he actually seems impressed with us.
He is just as you said. In battle, he is as if possessed by a demon. Much like you, I would expect no less.
See? I told you so. But I will kill you.
So, General Tyler, I hear you took your hand as well as your dignity.
Warhead storage. Special place, even now. Its layout is simple enough with a descending walkway, mainly for vehicles, followed up with a large open space. But it's the dense atmosphere, I guess, in this place that I feel should be overbearing, but puts me at ease for some reason, much like the vents. I don't know why, it could be the music you're hearing right now, actually. No weapons here. Not a good idea to fire a weapon in a room filled with dismantled nuclear warheads. And the game illustrates that very well by not letting us do it, because that would be stupid. The game actually has fast travel. Each box has a specific location on it, and box A is the heliport. Fine for me since I forgot to grab ambient footage from there, but yeah, fun little things, innit? The hallway to Emmerich's pad is filled with gas, and we get an oxygen bar to boot. It's a new little mechanic that they implement, and we can manage that by going quickly, but the electrified floor would kill us. We need to go downstairs and grab a remote-controlled missile launcher to fire at the switchboard. I already did, luckily. I was going down there to grab ambient footage for Psycho Mantis' music, but it wasn't playing yet. There's also a gas mask in the third room, which will be vital for exploring this place properly. Weird glitchy laser jet sounds are the norm for this game, but the oriental sounds and the weird voices turn this thing into a horror game real quick. The cyborg doesn't need a keycard because he has a great big sword, but he's about to put it in Dr. Emmerich, and we need that nerd for our mission. That nerd pisses himself, and the cyborg says he's been waiting for Solid Snake. Even after they explain this, it wouldn't have made much sense to most people playing the game. Emmerich runs into the locker and it's time for a very, very special boss fight, perhaps the most unique in the game. Hand to hand only. Dodge, evade, counter. Popping a chaff grenade every now and again temporarily stuns him, but you're only getting 3 hits max each time, so it's barely worth it really. At a certain point he'll break out his stealth camouflage, but there's only a few spots he can ever be in, so not really that hard. You just gotta hope you get lucky and get him in the right spot. Or just listen, because you'll hear the footstep thingy, otherwise known as a footstep. Just watch out for his Desperation Punch. It does massive damage on harder difficulties, and quite a bit of damage on easy too. After you beat him, in fact, he explodes, so watch out for that too, because that can also do quite a bit of damage. I have died that way. You think you won the boss battle and then he kills you with his self-termination. It really does seem like Snake knows the guy at this point. He says it's Grey Fox. I imagine barely anyone played the original Metal Gear before having played this when it came out, so the music and the emotional tone that they go for with Snake remembering Grey Fox, to us, just some random dude he knew. I don't know, it just rings hollow, I guess. Naomi knows a lot about it. Fox was used for gene therapy experiments. Poor guy, honestly. Still, don't really care at this point. Not gonna pretend to. He's just some cool ninja who fucks things up. And apparently has a tragic backstory. Onwards and upwards. So, this is a guy.
Are you one of them?
No, I'm not. I always work alone.
Alone? Are you an otaku too?
Heliport, Octagon, whatever you like. He's injured, but he toughs it out. Snake asks him for info on Metal Gear, and Octagon's all, well, it's a mobile TMD, only for defensive purposes, and Snake gives it to him straight. The otaku scientist was duped by the arms manufacturing men, it would seem. He's like, it's only got a cannon, a laser, and a railgun. For defensive purposes, of course. How could they turn my puppy into a war machine? Poor weapon building guy. I like him. Octagon's really cool. He and Snake get along really well. Am I really going to call him Octagon? I don't know. He's likable, and he and Snake get along really well. So he shows us his supercomputers that he probably uses for porn, and then he slaps the floor in anger. He's going to help us now, because the last thing he needs is a nuke launch on his conscience. It's quite unique in that he literally just appeared, is already a central figure in the plot, has a genuine backstory, and will be having a vital role in the story from now on as a prominent supporting character. Snake is quite cold towards him, but he's been alone for a long time. He makes sure Octagon doesn't have a blood or Blanderson attack, and Octi seems fine. No random heart attack or dramatic music. He then goes into really excessive detail about Japan, Japanimation, bipedal mech weapons, and tells us he got into weapon making because he watched too many mech animes. I'm not kidding. He swears off murder, but not anime, so I don't think he's in the clear yet. I think that as long as we can stop him from watching Psychopaths, we won't have any Dominators appear in the universe. He activates his stealth camo and he heads off. He's our friend now. Call him on 141.12 on the codec to talk to him if you want to talk to him before the story has him call you. So we're off to find Meryl, who's on floor B1, and this creepy music is now playing. It's something else, man. I genuinely dislike it, not because it's bad, but because it's the creepiest shit. I think I'm supposed to dislike it. It really puts me on edge. It's powerful, man. Meryl's disguised as an enemy soldier, but she has a distinct walk because the game wants you to look at her ass, and so you find her and chase her into the ladies' bathroom. But then Mei Ling gets angry at us. At least the Colonel understands. So does Miller. Even Octagon. At least the lads don't judge me. This does illuminate something that I love about this game though. A lot. A whole lot. Your codec companions. They have a comment on almost everything you can conceivably do in the game. Almost everything. Colonel Campbell complimented my box. Nastasia tells me about my night vision goggles. Mei Ling admonishes me for going into the women's bathroom. Meryl gets a drop on us in a quite literally impossible way, given the structural layout of the room. And I know there's a way to make her pantless in this cutscene, but I don't remember how, and literally who cares. She's polygons. Snake talks about how he fights for himself and only loves fighting because cheating death is the only thing that makes him feel truly alive at this point. He tells Meryl her butt looks good, and Meryl says what's next, so she don't mind obviously. But then Snake's all, on the battlefield you never know what's next, and mate, she's flirting with you, cool it down. Meryl talks in a way antithetical to Snake. Less doomer talk about being purposeless and directionless, and more a strong resolve to find out what she's made of and who she really is. This is because she's young and naive and thinks that the world is worth living in. I like her for this. She's got a firm resolve and she's brave. We'll see if the world kicks it out of her in 10 years, by the time she's in her 30s maybe. But yeah, she is brave, at least until this Easter egg. Stare at her in first person mode and she'll go red, and redder, and redder, and redder, until she looks like a big red apple. It really amplifies how odd it is to feel such an attachment for these people who don't technically have eyes. I mean, they kinda do, don't they? Kinda. But they don't have much detail, really low detail in the eyes. Old games are cool like that. Back in the day, this was hot shit. Polygons and memory were precious. It's funny though, whenever I play this game and I play another game, I'm like, wait, you have eyes? What's wrong with you? The absolute first thing I always remember when I go into this room is how the green hue of absolutely everything gives way to a warmer orange and brown here. And this isn't the domain of the player anymore, and this is the game's way of telling you this, I think. As Snake takes a codec call during Meryl's possession by Mantis, I'm reminded that I haven't yet brought up the elephant in the room. Now, MGS5 navigated this, and even MGS4 to an extent, by making codec calls fluid during gameplay. But whether through technological incapabilities or just pure design decisions and preferences, all of time stops during codec calls. The codec screen is Snake's inner haven, where the horrors of the outside world cannot enter and are completely paused. I've always wondered if there's something more to this abstraction than meets the eye, seeing as it's an idea that doesn't quite fit the events of the world in a cohesive way, instead prioritizing convenience for the player above literally everything else, since the last thing you want is to be killed during a long codec call. It represents the idea of Snake being able to take a call anywhere, at any time, but without having to worry about, you know, the mission. This is Psycho Mantis in the flesh. He's a floaty psychic man who proceeds to read your memory card and then comment on how well you've been doing so far in your journey. I don't know the nuances and particulars exactly, but he'll comment on all sorts of things, from your generally stealthy approach, if you are good at stealth, and being good at avoiding traps, even if one got you earlier. I have no idea as to the threshold for each of these things, but it's fun to see.
You have saved often. You are a prudent person.
I just like talking about things.
I can read you like an open book.
Wait, is that my microphone's on? I'm gonna include that. The Mantis battle. I've never been huge on boss battles. I kind of just go through them so I can go back to my stealthy adventures, like crawling along the ground and running away from guards, right? But this is probably one of the most unique boss battles of all time. In fact, I'd say it's much more unique than the Grey Fox battle. Even now, with all the technological advancements in gaming, it's all about the creative minds behind the games. Mantis takes control of Meryl, so difficult though it is, psychologically, I mean, you've got to knock her out. Then you got to fight the floaty psychic man. He takes control of your controller, and back in 1998 that meant physically getting up and switching the controller from port 1 to port 2. Kojima really is a madman, because he forced gamers to get up out of their chairs. Brave man. Nowadays you just play on PS3 like me and it's all done via the controller settings, but you know, whatever. Mantis also commandeers your mind to such an exceptional extent that when you use first person view, you see through his eyes instead. Thing is, this does give away his location for you, so the folks at Kojima Land thought of that too. All in all, always a trip. Anyway, you gotta put one in him, for defensive purposes of course. And that's him done. Meryl is saved as well, and Naomi's surprised that Snake cared enough to save Meryl and gives him some stick over it. Fair enough. Psycho Mantis' death scene is surprisingly poignant for someone we just met, but likely on account of how he literally reads Snake's mind and sees through Snake's cold hard man bullshit. He tells us that Snake and Meryl's futures may not be together, but they've known each other for maybe a few hours at this point, narratively, and in-game. For this reason, and probably many others, it really doesn't hit any sort of romantic note that doesn't feel contrived. Maybe Kojima thought it would, but not even nearly. They have chemistry, but we're only a few hours into the game, even if she is immensely infatuated with Solid Shake. I also admire the writing here and how Snake shows respect for Mantis and puts his mask back on for him, alongside allowing him to speak, despite the fact that a lot of what Mantis has to say is pretty vile. In short, it's a pretty well written scene, with a classy amount of poignancy and reverence for life and death.
Snake, can I ask you something?
What?
About what Mantis said. I was just wondering.
What? What's the problem now?
Oh, no, nothing. So, tell me, Snake, what's your name? Your real name?
A name means nothing on the battlefield.
How old are you?
Old enough to know what death looks like.
Any family?
No, but I was raised by many people.
Is there anyone you like?
I've never been interested in anyone else's life.
So you are all alone. Just like Mantis said.
Other people just complicate my life. I don't like to get involved.
You're a sad, lonely man.
Come on, let's go.
Anyway, this is my new box. It's Carboard Box B, and it's my new favourite. In amongst the very claustrophobic and man-made sequence of buildings that is Shadow Moses Island, I find that the caves are a very lovely little bit of nature in amongst everything else, and then it's a nice little juxtaposition. At the beginning and the end of the level, the only sounds you hear outside of your own footsteps and the beeps of the UI are actually the howling of the wolves. It's briefly broken up by a very subtle and quiet synthesizer humming away, as to indicate that you're still in danger, perhaps even a signification that safety is an illusion. It's probably just what you see in it really, but punch Meryl and equip the box and a puppy will piss on it. I'm not joking. It means that every subsequent visit through this cave from now on will be easier because the wolves will mistake the box as friendly. The fact that you gotta punch Meryl to do this is kind of weird. I don't like it, to be honest. Considering we just had to beat the shit out of her about 3 times during the boss battle. I don't like it, but I want my piss box. I do wonder if it's some sort of fetish shit, because there are so many other ways to do it. Meryl's kind enough to navigate us past the mines, even though we just punched her. This is because when Mantis dove into her mind, she saw it all. Thanks, Meryl. That was definitely on purpose. I love a thinking person's game. You know, one that encourages and rewards lateral thinking. Here's your reward. Naomi gives Snake a bit of stick again, saying he has the genes of a soldier, not a savior, and now she's getting obnoxious. She apologizes, but she's still getting on my tits now. Sniper Wolf managed to get her pretty good, and we have to go back into the armory and acquire a sniper of our own to fight back in this boss battle. That means backtracking through the building. Remember, you have fast travel, and you can utilize it if you want, but I decided to walk back the whole way and take things in. Every level 5 door is now available to us with a level 5 card, and there's no time limit either, so we might as well explore a bit. The backtracking is interesting. The areas have evolved with an amplitude and guard presence and cameras, and the canyon now has a bunch of cameras for you to throw chaff grenades at. And mines. Sniper Wolf pops diazepam like candy, so her hands never tremble. Ours do though, so we pop some too. Sounds like I'm ad-libbing again, but once again I'm not. It's in the lore. She's actually a legit benzo addict, benzodiazepines. I don't think I've ever met one before or since in a video game. Kojima Land produces some unique ideas. So the fight itself with Sniper Wolf, fight 1 of 2 as it happens. The trick is to pop a benzo, find a location quickly and just shoot. Rinse, repeat and don't die. What's unique about this fight, save for the tactical drug taking, and I guess the long range nature of it all, is that when you're using the PSG-1 sniper rifle, Snake will automatically go prone. You can move while standing, you can move while prone, but no crouch walking allowed. This would be the case until Metal Gear Solid 4. Maybe it looked too silly to implement. Either way, there's a brief window of time in which Snake will have to undergo an animation to go prone, so take that into account. Other than that, it's just a war of attrition. Even in analog mode, aiming in this game is really difficult, actually. But if I can score a few headshots, you should be fine. For defensive purposes, of course. Despite defeating Wolfie and decimating her with a sniper, she is fine, and she gets the drop on us. It's really stupid, now that I think about it, but it is a video game. Wolfie marks us, and now we're on her special prey list. Lucky us. We see many moons, and we're captured by Mr. Liquid Shake himself. He straight up accuses us of stealing his birthright from him, and he says we're brothers. It's time for the deep lore. We're baking the big theories now. The whole gang's here. Liquid Shake, Wolfie, Revolvo, Hatchback. The Shakes are both the last surviving sons of Big Boss, according to Blondie. I love this line.
We're going to launch that nuke and ride it all the way into history.
The kind of word you'd expect from a guy who's barely phased by a lost hand. You gotta hand it to him. Ocelot, as it happens, accidentally killed the DARPA chief with torture, despite the fact that we met him earlier. So the game's showing us 2 blonde old Blandersons. But Liquid confirms pretty much what's going on by saying he wants to find out what killed Baker and Octopus. That being Decoy Octopus, obviously. Anyway, it's alone time with Revolvo, and he's going to torture us for a while. This means a button mashing minigame, so Ocelot can get whatever info he can out of us, namely the trick to the card key that stops Rex from launching a nuke. He knows about the optical disc from Baker. He knows a lot of things, actually. Meryl's still alive, but here's the thing. The game has 2 endings. The first is that you give in to the torture and Meryl dies, or is killed, and then you leave with Octagon. The second is that you tough it out, Meryl lives, and Octagon and Snake part ways before linking back up in MGS 2. That's the canon ending. That is canon. Ocelot, as it happens, just straight up mentions which buttons to press. Like Kojima just really wants to establish that we and Snake are one entity. I've never heard a character reference the buttons on a PlayStation controller out loud until MGS. Don't even think about using audio. Mate, I've been rained on by decades of video games. I can't button mash like I used to. But the thing is, there's some great dialogue every time he tortures us. So even though I could escape from the cell pretty easily, I'm not going to escape from it until Octagon gives us some ketchup, even though my fingers and joints would thank me for it if I just got out of there quickly. There's some good scenes in Snake's cell as well. So yeah, torture time. Ready? Ugh. Look at this fucking hand missing. Watch out for infections, Ocelot. Oh shit. The start eventually. Does that your hand set to the rest of your arm? I hear Grey Fox is hiring for a chef cook. Oh shit. I guess the torture gameplay, if you want to call it that, it's not too difficult. An Ocelot has to do it for defensive purposes, of course, so it's totally okay morally as well. So the cell. Oh look, it's Blonald, but he's decomposed way more. It's the two Blonalds theory. The thing is, you can escape in a multitude of ways. Alright, maybe just a few. I know of the ketchup trick, I know of the hide under the bed trick, and I don't remember anymore. But wait around long enough and button mash enough times, and the game will eventually just release you from this purgatory prison via Grey Fox, of all people, who comes by and just slices everything up and helps you escape. He doesn't say anything though. The guard is Johnny, and he has frequent bathroom breaks because diarrhea is peak comedy in Kojima land. It's funny because he shits himself. Don't you reckon? Fantastic comedy. Thanks Kojima, really funny. The codec calls here are my favourite in the game because we get a more vulnerable, more down-to-earth and truthful Shake. He gives Campbell some shit for keeping things from him, but he's also showing sincerity towards everyone in a way that he hasn't before. I like this conversation between Snake and Ocelot on the topic of 20th century Russia and its struggles moving forward into the 21st century. You can tell there's no animosity between them, just an unspoken respect between two dudes on opposite sides. And I think that's why they can just yap about geopolitics in between torture sessions. Ocelot's motive, according to Ocelot that is to see Russia reborn. Snake's next conversation with Naomi reveals that he killed Big Boss, who was the leader of Outer Heaven, and that he killed him in Metal Gear 1 and 2, and that Big Boss was his father. That is changed later on in what is absolutely a retcon, but for now it's absolutely the case. He killed Big Boss, then Big Boss came back and he killed him again. Snake retreated into Alaska after the events of Metal Gear 2, wherein he killed Big Boss for the second time, and that's why he is the way he is. Or at least that's a large part of it, that's certainly what's implied. He says that Roy Campbell and Frank Yeager are his only friends. Naomi then tells a bit about herself too. She's actually grown on me. I'll be honest, Naomi is growing on me. She became an expert on genetics because her family is something unknown to her. Genes are a huge part of this game's narrative direction, so we'll come back to it later. A lot. The music's really brilliant during this codec call as well. It's the point where I remember being really sucked into the game and the story for the first time, as though it really hooked me in. The voice acting's really good too, and the musical direction is just pure fucking 21st century Kino. Octagon visits us and begs us not to kill Sniper Wolf like she didn't just put a bullet in Meryl, but he also gives us some ketchup. So that's nice of him. It'd be the world's most useless gift if it wasn't actually really useful. Go prone, pop it on the floor, and you can trick Johnny into thinking you're dead. Priceless. We ketchup our way out of the cell, beat the shit out of Johnny and grab our stuff and head all the way back to the comms tower. It also means going through the minefield again, but we have thermal goggles now, meaning we can actually see them, use a chaff grenade on the cameras and not run over a mine due to the radar malfunctioning. Other than that, it's a straight shot really. Sounds like a job for Carboard Box B. Ocelot hid a bomb in our inventory, by the way. Nice guy. If you don't spot it quickly enough, Deep Throat will warn you. You can also pick up the body armor in the Octagon hallway with your level 6 card. Going through the underground passage again gives Snake a flashback to something that happened like an hour ago, or maybe an hour of in-game time. But it's a useful scene that strengthens Snake's bond with his team. He's down about not being a hero for Meryl. He feels like he's failed her, and they all give him a pep talk, one after the other. Firstly Miller, then Mei Ling, then the Colonel. Even Naomi gives her own brand of motivation. It's like one big family. I'm sure nothing could possibly go wrong. I couldn't tell you where the definitive halfway point or watershed moment is in this game. One could argue it's Disc 2, but I've always seen it as the final push to go save Meryl and stop Metal Gear, which for me acts as the ascent up to the comm tower. It's huge, and there are dozens of floors, and for the love of shit, grab the rope at the bottom first before you do anything. You do not want to be running back down here. you're going to encounter wave after wave after wave of enemies. And I found the easiest thing to do is not to stop and shoot, but just to keep throwing stun grenades as you ascend. Before that, I'd just judo throw them with the square button and keep on running, but that just resulted in me getting knocked down too much. Carboard Box B will have to take a brief break. I couldn't take losing her. It's Liquid Snake in a helicopter now. Guess we're on our own. Rope, rappel, and we're free. Blow this door open with C4. It'll make things easier later. And now for some annoyingly convoluted stairways. God, I hate the comm tower. We meet Octagon, who calls us a movie hero, but Snakes will, in the movies, the hero saves the girl. I'm not a hero. Octagon followed us all the way up here to ask us this one very pertinent question.
Do you think love can bloom, even on a battlefield?
Yeah, I do.
Sure. Finally, it's time for the Liquid Hind D fight proper. It's actually quite easy. The Stinger missile's got an auto-lock function, so just take cover when you need to and then jump out and fire at him. Wonderfully simple.
Ready for your close-up scan?
Marion, get out of the car!
Ready to take blade! Admiral Akbar!
So the way back down is fun, because even though it is a literal stairway, it reinforces the general Metal Gear Solid ethos of using all of your equipment that you pick up as you go. And these cameras can actually be taken out completely with the Stinger missile, or just partially disabled with a chaff grenade. At the elevator, we have a battle with 4 soldiers, and it's cramped and annoying, and you'll be spinning a lot. But it did give us this one Octagon sprite. Use the Nikita and you can see Wolfie waiting for you. Yeah, it's her. Octagon sounds very happy, but he can suck it. It's time to finish her off for good. The battle was almost identical to the first wolf fight, but we can move around a lot more, and guessing her position's much more difficult due to the much wider area and the limited visibility. You can also use your Nikita. This is because the radar's operable now. Other than that, same old. I just used it again and again because I thought it would be funny. Right, we're here. Sniper Wolf's death scene. This scene is the best death scene of all blah blah blah, top 10 deaths of all time. It's overrated. Sorry. It's boring, honestly, and the love on the battlefield thing is a fucking hemorrhoid. Less the message and more the way it's presented. The words, the suddenness of it all, like I should care, looking at me weird when I don't. I always thought there was something earnest about it, so I let it slide, and maybe there is. I just nodded along while people on Reddit acted like it was the greatest scene of all time. Love blooming on a battlefield, Sniper Wolf's death, Octagon's grief. They're all shallow to me, man. The game places this tremendous emphasis on all three, but with Hal's grief over Sniper Wolf's death, it's a wet fart, man. We've never seen them together once. We've barely seen Sniper Wolf either, only a few times. The scene never got me. I've seen it praised for decades, but I just didn't give a shit. Figured I was heartless. Maybe I am. But we barely see her, we fight her twice, she pots some benzos, monologues for a few minutes after just being lung shot, and then she dies. Same with Octagon's unrelationship with her, like he's full on fallen for her, but to her he's just the dog feeder. At least as far as the player can tell. Maybe there's some drama CD where he writes her a love song or something. But why would I care about this stuff when you've never shown me any of it? Like, even if it is just Stockholm Syndrome on the part of Octagon, it's just barren. It's so barren that it wouldn't hit very hard either. She barely even acknowledges his existence, except to tell him to shut the fuck up while she's talking to Snake. Surely she'd need to at least treat him somewhat well in order to justify Stockholm Syndrome. Apparently that's how she is, but the one instance we see of them interacting is her telling them to shut up. It's like show, don't tell, innit? She definitely likes Snake and the dogs more, but Octagon's just sat in the snow crying over Wolfie like a tier 3 simp, crying over his favourite Twitch e-girl getting pumped. But I guess like pumped in a different way. In light of these two things, I find the love on the battlefield scene just weird. Weird and funny. Like Kojima wanted desperately to write love into his anti-nuke story, but forgot that the game isn't long enough and he hadn't planted like the love seed. Hence the lack of bloomage. I don't typically expect game devs to understand romance any more than the nerds who play these games, myself included. But this one's particularly funny because I remember years ago, pre-2010, where you could just have lists of the saddest deaths in gaming, and Sniper Wolf was always on there somewhere. But it just feels forced, I suppose. I don't care about how hard Sniper Wolf had it. All she's done is try to murder us and then get her shit kicked in. But hey, Big Boss rescued her when she was a midget, so yeah, top 10 deaths of all time. She was cool, but that was about it. Sums a lot of the game up, to be honest. And I know that it's not about time played, but rather the quality of that time, and by extension the quality of the handful of scenes the characters get. But I guess in that vein, this one just missed the mark. We didn't know, so it's goodbye to Sniper Wolf. We got her right in the lungs. Sniper Wolf is no more. She is off to another dimension to turn up at a YouTuber's house over some online beef. but I did enjoy Snake's speech to her, about dying as the proud wolf she is, how she essentially died a noble death. But even then, right after she calls Snake a hero and asks him to finish her off, Octagon cries and says, "I love you," and she just blanks him. She blanks him and she asks Snake for a gun. This line's good though.
Snake! What was she fighting for? What am I fighting for? What are you fighting for?
If you're in the mood for a prescient codec call and an Easter egg, look at the downed hind D. Since this is an old PS1 game and it's more than 5 minutes long, it does require multiple discs. It was a statement back then, in a way. Final Fantasy VII did the same thing with, I think, 3 discs, but MGS1 just has the 2, and the second half seems much shorter as well. I like Snake's little monologues. They seem a little sudden sometimes, but they got soul and charm. I like them. Hell is a blast furnace and an elevator. I hate elevators, but we start off in the blast furnace, disc 2 that is, and we have a real solid gameplay section here, and it involves molten lava, raised platforms, steam rooms, an elevator, and an overall increase in both difficulty and dimensions of gameplay, and also tension, I suppose. The increased heat is a nice touch to really get it across. The music is much more animated and it feels like a literal descent into hell. Now amplify that by a factor of whatever the fuck, and we have a literal elevator into it. You'll face a few battles along the way, which are actually reminiscent of the elevator battle in the comm tower, but this one is a little harder as the enemies are just that little bit more spread out because it's a larger space. Just blow them off the lift with a stinger. Miller calls us to tell us that Naomi might be a spy. He's been doing the math about Naomi's supposed background and he's found a lot of holes in her story. He mentions Naomi might be behind the weird ninja thing and the strange deaths, and that she could just be working with the terrorists. Towards the bottom of this long descent, a flock of ravens actually begins to circle you. It's really cinematic. It's one of my favourite little touches in the game actually, and I do love the setting of the tone here, but I'm always forced to wonder if you can actually use your stinger missile on these ravens. I never had the heart to do it, but every single time I'm tempted. Every time. I really want to know. Carboard Box B has our back as we enter Raven's lair, a glorified giant fridge. Snake's like, "You must have been a real threat in a mug duck eating contest." I figured it was just banter, maybe like a jab at Raven, and that he'd get all angry about it, but he's like, "Oh yeah, it do be like that, I bet you're a real threat in a mukbang eating contest. The world needs only one Raven and one tank." Apparently Snake has Japanese blood in him, by the way. So the Raven fight. You can lay a Claymore or a C4 down for him, and you can try to get him from behind with a Stinger or a Nikita missile, but the range of his weapon is almost as wide as the boss arena itself. It's not as spacious as the wolf fight though, and it will become even more cramped as Raven incrementally destroys parts of the level by shooting it with his big ass minigun. It's a really dynamic fight, it's quite enjoyable. Speaking as someone who mentioned that he's already a little meh on boss battles, I'll admit it's one of the more fun boss fights, especially considering I killed him by accident. I think he stepped over a Claymore I forgot that I put down. His death scene's probably the coolest. Much better than Sniper Wolf's, he just takes it like a champ. He's a cool, proud guy, and he doesn't do any of the cowardly, villainous shit that the others do. No underhanded crap, just pure spirit, just fights us straight up. He tells us that the first Blonald Blanderson was actually Decoy Octopus, one of Foxhound. That's why we haven't heard from him. I remember years ago someone claiming that Kojima wanted a Decoy Octopus boss fight, similar to what we'll eventually get in MGS4 with one of the beauties, but it seems as though the PS1 and its innate limitations, I suppose, just couldn't handle it, and so we just wrote him out. Not confirmed, but I did hear it. Raven is literally eaten by his Raven buddies, and Raven's message to Snake is really foretelling of where the series will go with Snake in the future. Master Miller calls us again, but the Colonel hears it too. Miller says Naomi Hunter isn't actually Naomi Hunter at all, but that she took someone's identity. Miller says to place her under arrest and interrogate her, probably means torture. Someone tell Ocelot we're hiring. This picture of Raven being gone and his minigun being all that remains is a really beautiful piece of environmental storytelling. I like all the lights when they freak out together from my chaff attack. Looks like a nuclear disco. Isn't it pretty? Zoom. What does zoom mean? I've always wondered, does anybody know what zoom... Do they know what that means? I tried to look it up. I tried a bunch of different ways of spelling it. I don't know what the fuck I'm looking up. It's just the word Zoom. This place is so steeped in ambience that I'm drowning in it now. Fitting though, because it's finally Metal Gear Rex. We finally meet him. Looks like a petrified dinosaur. Octagon's doing some hacking for us, and it's really cool to actually climb Rex's surrounding structures, and Rex himself, and perhaps they wanted to give us a sense of the scale of this thing, because relative to any character in the game, it is huge. The ambience in this game is so dense that it's like medicine, honestly. If you glance at the window, you can actually see Liquid and Ocelot chilling in the control room. Liquid's pacing back and forth, and it makes the game feel alive, I think. Octagon actually becomes very central to the plot. He's hacking shit and he's finding out things for us as we go. He discovers that Rex can launch a stealth missile, not a normal one, meaning it can't be picked up on a conventional radar. This is actually a serious issue in-game, and it's in the hands of a man who survived a high-D crash called Liquid Shake. But we have a hacker nerd on our side, so we've evened the playing field. We eavesdrop on the Revolver Ocelot and Liquid Shake conversation. They're having a friendly chat about which city to nuke. A nuclear test site is the eventual decision, which would conceal it from the public and thus avoid World War III. And also out the US, simultaneously, with their Rex project that Liquid and the terrorists hijacked with the revolution. Then Liquid will sell the system to just about anyone but the US. Shaky Boy says he'll demand $1 billion to cure the genome soldiers. Liquid does have a heart after all, a genetically inferior one. They also mention Foxdie, which is what killed Decoy Octopus and Kenneth Baker. Wolf avoided it because of her benzo addiction, and Mantis wore a mask, or maybe it's just not good at killing people. This is the first mention of it though, of Foxdie. Colonel Galukovich is mentioned for the first time. He has a Russian unit with over 100 soldiers. Or is it 1,000? Fuck, I can't remember. He has a lot of soldiers. We will see him and his unit in the sequel. But after all that talk, Liquid reveals his real motive. Liquid wants to stay put and dig in and revive Big Boss's dream, Outer Heaven. More on that as the series progresses, but a jet plane sound happened when he said it, so you know he's baking the big fucking business, bro. Octagon does some hacky stuff and cracks the code, and the secret to Snake's key is revealed. You don't need 3 keys to shut down Rex, it's all just that 1 key. Ocelot spots us and shoots it out of our hands, and down to the bottom of Rex's bum hole or something, so we gotta go down and get it, then come back up and pop it in the computer. But unfortunately there's even more to it, because the trick is that it changes based on temperature. It's 3 keys in one, and we need to use it 3 times. Once normally, already done, then frozen via Raven's boss arena, and then heated up via the furnace. It's a cool concept in theory, but it's terrible in practice due to the annoying execution via more backtracking, and a few minutes of standing around waiting for nature to just do its thing. In the Twin Snakes remake for what I think was the Nintendo GameCube, they added some pipes that you can shoot in the hangar. That's what I heard. But this is the OG, pros and cons. So you got the freezer key, oven key, and the kitchen cupboard key. I guess the box does slow you down. I still love Carboard Box B. Miller calls us on the long ride up the elevator to tell us about Foxdie. Looks like it was Naomi, and she did give Snake an injection in the briefing files of nanomachines. Is that the first time nanomachines are mentioned in this game? Nanomachines. We get another call on the way back down from Naomi herself, oddly enough. It was her, but not everything was a lie. She doesn't know her real name or much of anything about herself. It feels like the game wants me to feel sorry for her, and I almost do. Snake tells her to stop obsessing over the past and understand who she is now. Oh, she sounds like an edgy teenager when she says this. She's annoying again. She is actually Frank Yeager's adoptive sister, and she was close with Big Boss. She hates Snake because he killed her brother and her Big Boss Pappy, and that's why she's stuck in with that deadly Foxdie virus. Only for defensive purposes, of course. She's been obsessed with Solid Shake, and she admits she was partly wrong about him. Frank Yeager killed someone named Dr. Clark, the one responsible for the awful experiments done to him, and this will come back up in MGS 3 and 4, this Dr. Clark person. It wasn't Naomi's decision to use Foxdie. Snake was injected with it as part of the operation. Reason being, well, Naomi gets captured, so we'll have to wait a while, innit? The Colonel is all, Naomi can go get fucked. The scene's a very good one, and I found that the Naomi scenes in general carry a weight to them that most other scenes don't, and I think that's why she sort of grew on me over time. She's an interesting character, and I can understand the hatred for Snake, but I also like how she eases up on him, and comes to understand him a little more as the game goes on.
You double-cross Solid Shake.
We enter the final card and deactivate Metal Gear, except we actually activated it. Miller calls us and thanks us for activating the Warhead for him. They lied about it being activated so they could get Snake to do it for them. So why exactly is Miller acting like Liquid Shake? Because he is Liquid Shake. It's an incredible moment, man. It seems so obvious looking back, like he's always unavailable during the Liquid fights, but still, this reveal is exceptionally done. The Pentagon used Snake to infect everyone with Foxdie. That was the real idea behind this operation. That's why he was sent in, that's why he was chosen. and Liquid wants the vaccine for it. I guess his reasoning is, if there's a poison, there must be a cure. The reveal comes when Campbell tells us that Master Miller's body was discovered, the real Master Miller, and that he's been dead for days. It could be gas mask, because the room's going to fill with it, and call Octagon, he'll eventually hack it for you. It's time for Liquid to go into speech mode now. He tells Snake that he's lost his warrior's pride and become a pawn. Snake's told about how he was nothing more than a vector that spread Foxdie, a living weapon. Naomi was working with the Pentagon, but she's a wild card. She can't really be controlled by them. We know this because there's a spy working in the Pentagon. It'll be revealed at the end. Liquid ain't worried about Foxdie killing him because Snake's fine, and they're twins. So he's probably going to be fine too, right? Maybe. It's time for Les Enfants Terribles. Did I say that right? I think I did. I just can't roll my R's. Liquid laments that he got the flawed recessive genes and Snaky Boy got the good ones. He has a massive inferiority complex, but it's understandable. Liquid says Big Boss always told him he was inferior, which is awful to say to your son. Nice one, Big Boss. The Metal Gear Rex fight is quite difficult, so we're going to need a helping hand. This looks like a job for Carboard Box B. This fight's a straight up stinger match. Hide behind whatever you can, try to anticipate his attacks. It goes bullets, rocket, pause. Use this pause to twat his radome. He also has a death laser if you get too close, but it interrupts you less, so I'd recommend just standing next to that and shooting it repeatedly with a ration equipped. We win, but not really. And things look really bad until Grey Fox appears to help us out. He says he can't stop Naomi because he was the one who killed her parents. You want Snake to tell her the truth, and that's a big ask, honestly. But then Grey Fox literally sacrifices himself to help Snake. Hater's voice acting is really good here too. The game actually puts you in control of Snake, with Fox asking him to finish him off with a stinger. The thing is, no matter how much you press the fire button, Snake tells you, the player, that he just can't do it. I've talked a lot of player agency in these essays, but this is the first time I've consciously seen the game tell the player, you can't do anything, and have it be done in such a punishing way. Now this is a cool death scene. Sniper Wolf, take notes. And now we gotta face Rex again. This one's hard, and if you fail it, you gotta face the first phase again, and then watch Fox die again, and only then can you resume. Just shove rockets down Rex's mouth. Just do it like that. Balls to the wall. You know how whenever Liquid dies, he isn't really dead? Yeah, it happens again. He has now survived a helicopter explosion, and a Metal Gear Rex explosion as well. Who needs toughness when you can monologue? We get Big Boss lore from the Cold War, and how Outer Heaven was his dying wish. He says a bit more about what exactly that is. A more chaotic world, but with balance. A world for soldiers, essentially. A war economy, if you will. Filled with mercenaries and all that. I'll be honest, this storytelling device of evil twin brother says that you're just like him. At least here, I think it's kind of fun. So the Les Enfants Terribles was a project. It's hard to say, but it was designed to create the perfect soldier. 2 clones were born from that experiment, out of 8. These 2, Liquid and Solid. At least that's what Liquid says right now. He moans again about the recessive genes thing. And the genome soldiers, the guards we've been fighting, are also part of the overall wider set of experiments with Big Boss's DNA. Deoxyribonucleic stock footage. Super baby method. The super baby method. What? What does that mean? Why do MGS cutscenes always start of a year in an event? This is where the real world and the MGS timeline branch off for the first time, by tying in the real life Gulf War with the MGS universe DNA stuff. Liquid wants Big Boss's genetic info because all the Big Boss's clones have an expiration date, essentially. They're on the verge of death, according to Sunglass Man. This line is so stupid though.
It's fate. All living things are born for the sole purpose of passing on their parents' genes. That's why I'll follow what my genes tell me.
I'm sure that seemed deep decades ago, but now it's like, can't you think for yourself? Oh well. The Secretary of Defense is going to bomb Shadow Moses Island, and he wants to cover it all up with a nuclear bomb. But hey, at least the Colonel's going to try to help. He's going to risk his job to help Snake escape. The big bad US government put Meryl on Shadow Moses to manipulate the Colonel, to manipulate Snake. He feels bad, and this is his atonement, I suppose. At least it would be if he wasn't taken out. My immediate thought whenever I see this scene is like, who's this fucking Western villain that isn't Ocelot? It's Jim Hausman, Secretary of Defense. Talk about defensive purposes, eh? He's gonna bomb us, and it dawns on Snake that, you know, US government bad. So yeah, might as well fight each other to use the cooler brother in the meantime, if we're gonna die anyway and get bombed. After a game full of vehicles, weapons, and items, the final boss is a simple bare-knuckle fistfight between two bros. Beautiful. With literally 1 second left. Well, that'll do it. Bye, Liquid. Meryl, I'm a hero. Let's have a moment. Fuck's sake, Liquid. So as the most annoying car sequence in gaming plays in the background, in order to avoid detailing it, it's a good time to mention that Snake's scene with Meryl is only because we didn't give in to the torture. I mentioned this earlier, but this is the exact point where the timelines branch. This is the good ending. So Octagon calls us, and he's like, yeah, you the man, Snake, and he tells us how to escape. Snake's really warmed up to Meryl and Octagon. Hal is going to stay here. That's his name. He's going to stay here, even if they bomb it. But he's done regretting the past, he says. He's going to help us out even if it kills him, because he's found a reason to live. I like how he gets his moment like this. He's a complete character now. And with this crash, gameplay is over. Liquid corners us and it seems like a bad ending's on the horizon. But then...
Uh-oh. Snake!
Well shit, thanks Naomi. It's not all bad, is it? Colonel Campbell's back too. The Secretary of Defense has been arrested, for defensive purposes, of course, and it was him, acting all alone. And Campbell hit up the President to tell him, as you do. All in all, it's a good ending. A really good ending. We saved the Colonel's niece. Campbell says sorry for lying. Snake forgives him. Octagon's gonna have someone come pick him up. Naomi then. She seems nicer now. Snake doesn't tell her what Fox really said to her, which was, you know, tell her I killed her parents. And Snake instead tells her that he said he'll always love her. It's a lie that goes down really well. Snake asks when the Fox die will kill him, since he still has it in his system, and Naomi plays it down, just saying, live, it's all I can say to you. No, Naomi, you could tell him when the virus you stuck him with is likely to kill him. She then monologues about how our genetics are immutable, and how there's more to life regardless of that, and the theme seems to be that we're the authors of our own stories in life, so to speak. I get the message, Kojima, but not even a rough guess for this Fox die thing? 5 years, maybe 10? Nothing? Funny thing is, in the bad ending where Meryl dies, Roy admits that he's actually Meryl's dad. He had an affair. So like, Meryl's actually his daughter. And you'd only realise that if you let her die. But we didn't let her die. But she is still his daughter. And we won't see her till MGS4 anyway, so it doesn't really matter at this point. Shadow Moses in daytime is very peaceful. It's a stark contrast to the beginning of the game. I believe it's intentional, even with Naomi acting as Kojima's self-insert, talking about how great life is when we all love each other and all that. Meryl found a bandana, which is actually the clear game bonus. I'll play this next scene in full. It's corny as hell, yeah, and in many ways it's a typical love story thing, but I do really like it. I think it's very sincere.
Until today, I've lived only for myself. Survival has been the only thing I cared about in my life.
That's not just you. That's how everyone is.
I only felt truly alive when I was staring death in the face. I don't know. Maybe it's written into my genes.
What about now? What do your genes say about your future now?
Maybe it's time I live for someone else.
Someone else?
Yeah. Someone like you. Maybe that's the real way to live.
So, where to, Snake?
David. My name's David.
Okay. So where to, Dave?
I think it's time we look for a new path in life.
A new path?
A new purpose.
Will we find it?
We'll find it. I know we'll find it.
What are those?
Caribou. To the Aleutians, the caribou is a symbol of life. It'll be spring here soon.
For us too.
Yeah. Spring brings new life to everything. It's a time for hope. I've lived here a long time, but Alaska has never looked more beautiful. the sky, the sea, the caribou, and most of all, you.
I think I'm gonna like this new life.
Come on. Let's enjoy life.
And then they broke up, and Snake got with Octagon instead. Anyway, nuclear warhead lore. So we get the best is yet to come, some footage of the Alaskan wilderness, and that's it. Metal Gear Solid 1. What a weird fucking experience. Really fun. Solid Snake ain't exactly the most deep character there ever was at this point in the series, but he's likable, and he's occasionally funny and relatable. Killing aside, him going from lonely guy to finally letting people into his life is really nice to see. And he's symbolic of a certain vibe that this entire game gives me, perhaps even this series as a whole. I cracked the code myself. Something about the small scale of the game is really cozy, even with all of the drama. These guys are going to be very much on the world stage as the series goes on, and while a whole host of other characters will come along and add to things, and sometimes even subtract from the experience. The idea that Metal Gear Solid really all started with just a bunch of weirdos on a secluded nuclear disposal base in a dark and dreary Alaska really puts the whole thing into focus. The series is going to take us all over the world and through an entire gamut of emotions, but I love the simplicity of this game. I love the idea of having just one large structure as the entire map, segmented into multiple levels but part of the overall same grand picture. It envelops you into the setting to the point that Shadow Moses is a living, breathing entity, and the MGS series all really just started here because of it. Everything that Metal Gear Solid is, and would later be, for better or worse, was born on this tiny little island, more than any other Metal Gear game. And I think that from MGS2 onwards, with the grand scope of the series set to expand pretty dramatically, there's something uniquely special about this place relative to the rest of the series. The closed-in nature of the story is analogous to the boxed-in nature of the environment in which it takes place. And I think that attention to detail with the setting is the main reason I always come back to the game. That and Carboard Box B, obviously. Even with all the dramatic stuff and sad moments, I could always just play the game again and again and again, and this, I've lost count. I've lost count of the amount of playthroughs I have of this game. It certainly helps that it's about 10 to 15 hours long, depending on difficulty setting. But we've established some main characters: Solid Shake, Octagon, the Colonel, Revolvo Ocelot, Mei Ling, Naomi. The seeds have been planted, mechanics and features will be expanded upon, characters will face new challenges and become more fleshed out as we go along, and the in-game world and universe will come into clearer view. But it all started here, man. Maybe it didn't always hit the notes that it wanted so badly to hit, but it's all good. It hit enough, and it laid the foundational schematics for a series that would go on to cement itself in gaming history. It ain't the birth of Metal Gear, but it is the start of everything good about it. It likes things to be cozy and dramatic, and it's overly emotional. Wasn't that the question I had at the beginning? Yeah, I figured out why I like it so much.
Yes, sir. The entire unit was wiped out. Those two are still alive. The Vector? Yes, sir. Fox Die should become activated soon. Right on schedule. Yes, sir. I recovered all of Rex's dummy warhead data. No, sir. My cover is intact. Nobody knows who I really am. Yes, the DARPA chief knew my identity, but he's been disposed of. Yes, the inferior one was the winner after all. That's right. Until the very end, Liquid thought he was the inferior one. Yes, sir, I agree completely. It takes a well-balanced individual such as yourself to rule the world. No, sir. No one knows that you were the third one, Solidus. What should I do about the woman? Yes, sir. I'll keep her under surveillance. Yes. Thank you. Goodbye, Mr. President.